Welcome to The Debate. Today we are stripping away the veneer of internet absurdity to examine a digital ecosystem that functions as a surprisingly ruthless simulation of hypercapitalism. We're analyzing the Roblox experience known as Escape Tsunami for Brainrots.
A title that feels less like a game and more like a warning label. But I'm ready to dive into the chaos.
Excellent. Our case study today focuses on the gameplay of the creator Senpai Unlimited. To the untrained eye, this experience looks like a complete fever dream. A hybrid genre combining the asset management of a tycoon game with the, high-stakes survival of a disaster simulator. But the central question we're tackling is, it's much deeper. Is this game a sophisticated exercise in liquidity management and risk assessment? Or is it, as I suspect you believe, just a dopamine-fueled Skinner box reliant on pure randomness and visual noise?
I think you know where I stand. The question isn't whether the math is complex. The question is whether the math even matters. You see a stock market, I see a slot machine that's disguised as a survival challenge, designed solely to keep users clicking through a cycle of what I'd call inflationary absurdity.
I represent the position that the gameplay loop demonstrates a really complex economic strategy. The player has to balance cash flow, asset depreciation, and calculated physical risks to maximize efficiency in a very volatile market.
And I'll be representing the position that the game is a broken economy, where strategy is basically an illusion. It's a system of visual clutter, predatory gambling mechanics, and, frankly, arbitrary interventions by so-called admins that render actual skill meaningless.
Let's move to our opening arguments then. When I analyze the footage of Senpai Unlimited, I don't see a gamer just mindlessly pressing buttons. I see a portfolio manager engaged in, rigorous inventory curation. Early in the session, we see a critical moment. He decides to liquidate his extra inventory. He isn't just selling items, he's identifying dead capital. He realizes that his lower-tier assets are taking up physical space, which is a finite resource in his base, and they are no longer generating a competitive yield. He explicitly clears the floor to focus exclusively on divine and celestial tier assets. This is the behavior of an efficiency maximizer. He's optimizing yield per square foot.
That is a very generous reading of what is, let's be honest, a very clunky interface. Let's look at that same moment through the lens of user experience. The player isn't just optimizing, he's fighting the UI. He explicitly calls the inventory limit kind of annoying, and notes that if he isn't careful, items just go to the void. They disappear. That's not a strategic constraint. That's just poor database design forcing the player's hand. But more importantly, look at what he's collecting. Big strawberries, mini admin pets, radioactive units. The aesthetic is literally labeled brain rot. He is chasing these items not because they offer deep mechanical interactions, but because the game flashes lights and tells him, number go up. It's a conditioning experiment, not a market strategy.
I'm not convinced by the conditioning argument because it ignores the forward planning that's required. Consider his investment in the speed stack. In most tycoon games, you only invest in income generation. Here, the player pours, octillions of cash into his movement speed, reaching a velocity of 394. Why? Because he understands the external threat, the tsunami. He explicitly states, I'm putting all the money into speed because I have to reach speed someday. This is a hedge. He's balancing short-term yield against long-term survivability. He knows that being the richest corpse in the ocean is a failed strategy.
But is it a hedge, or is it a reaction to broken physics? The survival aspect you praise is just riddled with what gamers call admin abuse. Arbitrary events where the game code spawns impossible scenarios. We see moments where he survives a wonky wave, not because of his calculated 394 speed, but because the hitboxes, the invisible shapes that determine collision, are completely unclear. He even admits, I'm too fast for this game, and has to lower his speed because the physics engine just breaks down. When the simulation creates the danger and breaks the solution, you're not playing a strategy game, you're just enduring a glitch.
I believe those glitches act as a kind of market volatility. But let's suspend that for a moment and move into the core debate. I want to start with the economic structure, specifically the phenomenon of the new currency.
You mean the green bills that appear out of nowhere?
It's not out of nowhere. It's a structural shift. The player reaches a point of saturation with the standard currency. He's accumulated octillions, a number so large it just loses all meaning. The game then introduces a secondary currency where he notes 1 bag equals 10. This is a fascinating simulation of a hyperinflationary event, or, a currency revaluation. In the real world, when a currency collapses, a new standard is adopted. The player realizes his 56 quadrillion in the old money is essentially poverty in the new economy.
Poverty in the new economy. That sounds poetic, but let's be real. This is a treadmill that ran out of belt. The developer simply ran out of numbers that the code could handle. When the player says, "I'm effectively poor again," despite having octillions, it just highlights the nihilism of the whole genre. The conversion rate is arbitrary math designed to obscure the fact that there's no actual content left. There's no market force driving this change. It's a hard gate. You call it revaluation. I call it moving the goalposts so the player doesn't realize he's finished the game.
If it were just moving goalposts, the player would quit. But he doesn't. He adapts. And this is where the strategy lies. He immediately pivots, upgrading his divine units to level 150 plus to start generating this new liquidity. He performs a cost-benefit analysis on the fly, realizing that his old secret rarity units, which, sounds impressive, are now just obsolete tech. He sells them. He creates a new hierarchy of value based on the current economic reality, not past sentiment. That is the definition of market adaptability.
Okay, but look at the friction involved in that adaptation. It's not a smooth transition, it's a hard reset that completely disrespects the player's time. And this ties into the risk aspect you mentioned earlier. You claim that Tsunami validates these economic upgrades. I'd argue the Tsunami exposes the game's fundamental brokenness.
How so?
The Tsunami is the stress test. Without the wave, it's just a spreadsheet. With the wave, it becomes a crisis management simulator.
A stress test implies a fair exam. The player explicitly complains that his legs get stuck. He mentions being weighed down suddenly when he's carrying big items. At one point, he asks, is the Brainrot size allowed? Because the models are so massive, they actually impede his movement. The challenge isn't the wave. The challenge is the game's inability to handle its own assets. You mentioned the clutch of the century, where he survives near the mystery merchant. He admits, what a save, bro. That wasn't a strategic maneuver derived from his portfolio management. That was him fighting a glitchy collision system while the screen was filled with visual garbage. I think you are dismissing the skill involved in navigating that chaos. That visual garbage is part of the difficulty curve. But let's look at why he takes those risks. He risks the wave to reach the lucky blocks. And this brings us to the gacha mechanics.
The gacha. For our listeners who might not know, this is essentially a virtual vending machine where you pay currency for a random chance at a reward. It's a slot machine, plain and simple.
I'd call it a probability market. The player isn't just opening boxes blindly, he's assessing odds. He discusses specific hierarchies: secret, celestial, divine, radioactive, emerald. When he sees a radioactive celestial or an emerald celestial block, his excitement reflects a deep understanding of the rarity curve. He is hunting for the money elephant, knowing the odds are 0.07%. That is not blind gambling, that is venture capital. He's allocating time and risk running into the danger zone to secure an asset with a high potential return on investment.
Venture capital involves due diligence on a business. This is chasing a lottery ticket. He's chasing a 0.07% chance. That is a statistical anomaly, not a business plan. And look at his reaction to the secret rarity. He dismisses secret units as having low respect or down reputation. Why? Because the game has arbitrarily decided that secret, which usually implies the highest tier, is now worse than celestial or divine. The definitions of value are completely fluid and frankly nonsensical.
They aren't nonsensical, they're dynamic. In this closed economy, the secret units have depreciated because newer, more efficient tech, the radioactive units, has entered the market. The player's dismissal of the secret rarity is a rational market reaction to obsolescence. Think of it like the tech industry. A top-tier computer from 10 years ago is a secret rare item, but it's useless for mining Bitcoin today. The player notes that the secret units don't produce the yield he needs for the new currency. He isn't being arbitrary, he's being ruthless. He sells the old tech to fund the new.
You make him sound like a Wall Street trader, but he's playing a game where he opens a chess lucky block and gets disappointed because the piece doesn't fit his base. He opens a big admin lucky block and gets a unit that is just, well, bigger. The value is purely psychological, driven by that admin label. It suggests authority and power, but functionally, it's just another asset on the pile that creates more visual noise.
That brings us to the aesthetic dimension, the brain rot itself. You view the giant strawberries, the memes, the big stroke units as noise. I view them as a satirical commentary on digital consumption.
Commentary? It's sensory overload.
It's conspicuous consumption. In a multiplayer tycoon environment, you aren't just building for yourself. You're building to signal dominance to the server. The player actively seeks out the big variants. Why? For visual prestige. Having a big radioactive celestial unit isn't just about the stats, it's about taking up space. It's about forcing the entire server to acknowledge your economic power.
It signals illegibility. A strategy game requires information to be clear. Here, the big units literally obstruct the view of the tsunami. The player says, "I just barely touched it," regarding the wave, because he couldn't see the hitbox through the clutter of his own wealth. The visual noise, the Wave Wednesday chaos, the admin lucky block mutation that makes everything huge, it actively works against the player's ability to make those calculated risks you love so much. The game blinds you with your own success.
That is a feature, not a bug. Managing the visual complexity is part of the high-level play. The player has to balance the desire for big, prestigious units with the functional need to see the threat. It's a trade-off between vanity and utility. If you become too rich, you literally cannot see the danger coming. I mean, that's a profound metaphor.
Or it's just bad design. And let's go back to the math of that vanity. The player mentions a 0.9% chance for a divine unit and 0.07% for the money elephant. He explicitly says it's too less, bro. He recognizes the unfairness. He wants to open one or two, but the math is stacked against him, yet he keeps playing. Why? Not because he's optimizing a portfolio, but because the lucky block mechanic is a classic variable ratio enforcement schedule. It's pure behavioral conditioning. The admin spawning events are just the ringmaster throwing peanuts to the crowd to keep them in the tent.
I'm not convinced by the peanuts analogy because the player ultimately succeeds. He reaches a state of max base. He hits the upgrades. He survives the clutch of the century. If it were purely random chaos, he would have failed. Instead, he navigated the chaos. He used the admin blocks to his advantage, securing the radioactive units that allowed him to bridge the gap to the new currency. The system is wild, yes, but it is navigable for those who understand the rules of the chaos.
He navigates it, sure, but look at the end of the run. He says, I think I have to level up more. I have only 4 divines. After all that, after the octillions, the speed upgrades, the survival, the stress, he is still feeling the deficit. The game is designed to never let him feel secure. That's not a simulation of capitalism. Well, actually, you know what? Maybe it is the perfect simulation of capitalism. It's an endless hunger that can never be satiated, dressed up in the costume of a giant strawberry.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. It's a simulation of growth. The player's journey from octillions to new currency and his ruthless culling of weak assets demonstrates a sophisticated maximization mindset. He isn't a victim of the system, he is a master of it. He understands that in this world, if you aren't growing, you are dying or getting washed away by a tsunami. The game provides a framework for endless optimization, and the player accepts that challenge with enthusiasm.
I think we're looking at the same painting and seeing 2 different pictures. You see a stock market graph, I see a Jackson Pollock painting thrown into a blender. The experience is a colorful, noisy distraction. The player's survival is largely accidental. What a save, bro. And his accumulation of wealth is rendered meaningless by arbitrary currency resets. It is a game of spamming events and chasing 0.07% odds. It simulates nothing but the frantic consumption of digital empty calories.
And yet, we can't deny the engagement. The player is locked in, he's calculating, reacting, and planning. Whether the assets are brain rots or blue chip stocks, the cognitive processes required to manage them are strikingly similar. The brain has to process risk, reward, and opportunity cost in real time.
Engagement, yes. But is it the engagement of a chess master or the engagement of a moth flying into a bug zapper? I think the source material leans heavily toward the latter. The moth thinks it's going toward the light, just like the player thinks he's going toward the money elephant.
We have covered a lot of ground today, from the economics of new currency to the physics of wonky waves.
Indeed, it's been quite a trip through the brain rot.
To summarize my position, Escape Tsunami for Brainrots creates a deceptively complex environment. The player, Senpai Unlimited, demonstrated a clear strategic evolution. He moved from simple accumulation to complex portfolio management, liquidating obsolete, secret assets to leverage radioactive and divine tiers. He balanced the accumulation of capital with the necessary investment in speed to manage external risk. The game forces the player to adapt to hyperinflationary events and rewards those who can identify the highest yield assets amidst all the chaos. It's a sandbox for the optimizing mind.
And to summarize my position, the game is a flashing, noisy monument to the Skinner box. The economics are arbitrary. Numbers go up until they don't, and then they just change color. The strategy is undermined by broken physics, where legs get stuck and screens get blocked by big models. The player is chasing a 0.07% dopamine hit, hoping for a money elephant in a system designed to make him feel constantly poor regardless of his octillions. It engages the brain not through depth, but through sensory overload and the gambling fallacy.
It is fascinating how a single Roblox experience can elicit such divergent interpretations. One sees the beauty of the market, the other sees the absurdity of the casino.
Perhaps that's the genius of the brain rot genre. It captures the modern internet experience perfectly. Simultaneously a high-stakes economy of attention and a completely nonsensical void.
A valid observation. Both of us can agree that the game successfully induces a state of high alert engagement, the flow state, regardless of whether that engagement is derived from strategic clarity or the panic of surviving a tsunami while holding a giant strawberry.
We can certainly agree on that.
We invite you, the listener, to consider whether you play games to master a logical system or simply to survive the wave and see what comes out of the next lucky block. Thank you for listening to the debate.
Until next time.